What is the most disturbing thing you've overheard a parent tell their kid? Heard someone get really mad at their kid, who was 7 or 8, in the grocery store, and they screamed, "This is why your dog ran away. He hated you." Like, geez, lady, chill. "I wish you were never born," in a grocery store after a small child was acting up. I was leaning against a telephone pole at a bus stop, just waiting for a friend to meet me there and then walk to my place. A woman and a little girl were sitting at the stop when a car pulled up. The lady stands up and looks at the little girl and says, "If I'm not back in an hour, call your grandma and tell her I said for both of you to get out of this town and disappear." Then she got in the car and it drove off as my friend came around the corner. I dated a girl in high school who was adopted. One day I was at the mall with her and her mother when they started fighting and her mother yelled, "Well, now I know why your mother put you up for adoption." It was pretty much the worst thing I've ever heard. This guy I dated had an adopted sister and his mum said the same stuff. She called her a little hussy as well. I was helping my dad fix one of his rentals. The toilet was plugged up and we found out that it was clogged with numerous action figures. My dad asked the renter's child if he was the one who put them in the toilet. To my surprise, he admitted it completely and apologized. Immediately, the renter dragged her kid by the arm into another room. We could hear everything said, which should have been obvious to her. She said, "Don't you ever betray you or yours again. If someone asks you if you did something like that, you say no. You understand me?" Ugh. Not me, but my mother. At the elementary school we worked at, there was one mother who constantly bullied her son, including pinching him over the slightest things, blatantly favoring his siblings over him, and making him walk to school in the rain. My mum reminisced how she rarely saw the kid being happy. One afternoon during my mum's parent and bus pickup duties, she observed the kid's mum picking him up from school and yelling at him. As usual. Through tears, he asked his mum why he couldn't just go live with his dad. "Then you don't even have to see me anymore. Why can't I go stay with Daddy?" And her answer? "Because he wants you," before slamming the door and driving off. I still don't understand how that woman never lost custody of him. "Out of all my children, you are the biggest disappointment." Oof. I sincerely hope you were listening to Lucille Bluth, because that's the only person with whom that statement has any chance of being remotely funny from. And even then, only if she was talking to Job. But seriously, that's freaking tragic and probably broke a kid. Not really public, but when I was in high school, I was at my best friend's house hanging out. He got in an argument with his mum and she got so teed off that she said, "I honestly wish I didn't have to put up with your bullcrap. You're only here because of divorced whoopee," meaning he was conceived when his parents did the deed after their divorce. I was sitting there in stunned silence as she storms off. My friend just starts laughing as if it's the funniest thing he's ever heard. He would even proudly tell people that he was here because of divorced whoopee, with this big grin on his face. Just had this happen today. "Hold the dog's leash or I'll strangle you with it." This was said by a father to his 5-year-old kid. The dog was a youngish-looking German Shepherd. My son has hydranencephaly, and his head is a little larger than normal because of a buildup of CSF fluid. Once at an appointment, a kid in a wheelchair, probably 5 or 6 years old, said quietly and innocently to his dad, "Look at that kid's head." And his dad replies, "Don't talk about him, you're in a wheelchair." Now, I'm all for parents using my son as a teaching opportunity to break stigma on special needs kids, or educate their kids on how to speak politely, say hi, or ask a polite question about special needs people, but I was shocked that this kid's dad said that to him. Don't make me regret not going to the clinic. We were getting in line to get ice cream when I noticed $20 on the ground. I asked if it belonged to anyone. A middle-aged woman and a teenage girl, presumably her daughter, sitting near us, noticed. The mother nudged the daughter and said, "I think that's yours." And the daughter didn't even look away from her ice cream and said, "No, it's not." The mother presses on, saying, "Are you sure? I think it is." This back and forth continued. Clearly it isn't hers and the mother wants her to take the $20 anyway. Eventually the kid gives up and agrees, saying she thinks it's hers. Taking the $20 wasn't what bothered us. It was insisting your daughter do the wrong thing even when she clearly doesn't want to lie. I overheard a father shout, "Stop crying. Why do you always have to make everything about you? Everything is just the worst thing ever, isn't it?" at his hysterical toddler. Today. If you get hurt, you're in trouble. If you get in trouble, I'm gonna hurt you. The other day, the couple that lives in the apartment downstairs from me were outside trying to get their kids to be quiet and get in their car seats, but they were crying and arguing. The dad was going on with the "shut up, stop crying, stop yelling" stuff, but it was only making them worse. Then the mum really calmly walked over to the door and said, "I'm tired of you two fighting. I don't want 2 kids anymore. If this is what having 2 kids is like, I don't want 2 kids. I'm giving one of you guys up. You'd better decide which one of you is staying." That shut them up, though. I should clarify that when I say it's disturbing, it's only really messed up out of context, and I kind of understand why she'd say that. Honestly, I thought it was pretty funny. Was at a ghetto CVS, and a parent told her child something along the lines of, "If you keep crying, I'm going to pull out a piece and shoot ya. If you don't shut the frick up, I'm going to beat the crap out of you." This was on base, and the man was yelling into his car. I'll always regret not calling the cops. A father telling his preteen daughter how she was going to grow up to be a hussy just like her mother. She couldn't have been more than 11. On the train around early December last year, I overheard a father shouting at his, couldn't have been much older than 6, son, and threatening him with, "Santa won't bring you any presents if you keep acting like a little crap bag." To which the kid replied, "How can you make Santa do that?" And the father, kneeling down to make eye contact with his son, said, "I'll wait for him to come down the chimney, and then I'll punch all his fricking teeth out, that's how." I'm sure the son loved both Christmas and his dad after that. My fiancé and I were at dinner last year, and we were seated next to this really bizarre-looking family. It was busy and tables were jammed close, so we heard everything they said. The daughter had to have been around 13, and was carrying a little kid's stuffed animal and holding it the whole time. The mum wouldn't let the daughter order what she wanted and started body-shaming her kid, who was skinny but clearly going through puberty, telling her how disgusting and fat her hips were starting to get. Mum, by the way, was morbidly obese. Of course. So the girl ended up having to split a salad with her dad, while her slightly older brother had like 3 plates full of food sat right in front of him. What do you even do when you witness unfolding childhood traumas like this taking place right in front of you? This is actually mortifying, and I would love to know in the comments, even if I never end up running into any of it myself. I heard one of my old neighbors say to her son, "If you keep crying like a little B-word, I'll put you in a dress. You want to wear a dress? No? Then shut the F up." I was outside gardening with my daughter, who was about 6 at the time. Her eyes just went wide and she asked me why she would talk to her kids like that. I didn't really have a good answer. I was at Kroger browsing through an aisle. 2 young men were there with an older man, I'm guessing their father. One of them was talking about how he beat the crap out of his girlfriend recently and how he felt like a terrible person about it. The older gent put his hands on his shoulders and says, "Son, boys will be boys." I always tell my 1-year-old I'm going to give her a knuckle sandwich if she whacks me with her maraca again. Then she laughs and donks me on the head with it. Threatening to bite her little toesies off doesn't work either. "Stop mucking about, you little C-word, or I'll frickin' thrash ya." A mother talking to her child while walking them to school in front of all the other kids and their parents. This was in a low-income neighborhood in Australia. I used to work in a kindergarten, and we had a kid around 3 years old who wouldn't and mostly couldn't talk yet. He said a few words at home, but while in kindergarten he only made noises and gestures to get us to understand, but was making progress and we were getting medical help at the request of the mother. At this time, it was popular between the older kids to go to each other's places after kindergarten, and this kid really wanted to join that, but the mother's answer? "When you start talking to your friends, you can go to their place after kindergarten." And no surprise, all our progress was lost, and he locked himself in even more. I was in shock. I just couldn't believe what I'd heard. This woman was so unhappy with her son not talking, nagging day in and day out that we must help her, and she just throws every piece of progress out the window. It was so sad. This actually was just said to me. It happened last year. I'm a dancer and I used to compete on teams and as a soloist. I don't really compete anymore, college, you know? One day I was competing my solo and just touching up my makeup in the dressing room where I accidentally was in the way of a mum and her daughter who was my age. I said, "Sorry, I'll be out of your way in a second," and the mum said I was totally fine and something about sharing a bathroom with siblings. I laugh and say, "Oh yeah, I get you. I have 3 younger siblings myself," and the mum says, "Really? I would have stopped after you," right in front of her kid. I smiled uncomfortably, grabbed my bag, and moved to the other side of the room.
You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe.
My first job in my small little town in Australia was manning the toy section of the local Target. It was a lower-end suburb, so there was a pretty big Indigenous population that stayed in the area. Most of the people actually working at the Target were either white or some suitably civilized shade of brown. Anyway, what I'm saying is everyone working there was slightly racist and would pay a little more attention to anyone Indigenous who happened to walk in. To reduce shrinkage, of course. So one day I'm in the toy aisle rearranging all the Barbie dolls that some idiot kids had taken off the shelf and abandoned in homewares when this Aboriginal lady walks by with her daughter. The girl couldn't have been more than 8, and like any 8-year-old, she naturally makes a beeline for the Barbies and picks one up to look at it. Her mum, who let her hand go for a moment, yells, "You put that down or they'll think you're stealing it," and grabs the girl by the hand and walks off. I felt like crap, not the least because that B-word Sandra, who manned the front of the store, had been quietly trailing the two of them since they entered. Imagine being surrounded by that level of hostility your entire life, that you have to pass wisdom like, don't pick stuff up from the shelf or people will think you're stealing, to your kids. People who think Indigenous Aussies should just get over it have no gosh darn idea how bad it is for them in some areas. Made me ashamed to work there. Not someone else, but me. When I was 11 or 12, we went to Disney and my dad kept bugging me about why I looked so unhappy. I wasn't, I just have a resting B-word face. Eventually, we were at some chicken restaurant surrounded by tons of people and he called me an ungrateful B-word in front of about 30 people. Just a month ago, me and my boyfriend went to Disney World in Florida. While eating lunch in a quieter, more isolated area, we saw a dad drag his 8-ish-year-old daughter to a table near us and in hushed tones, but loud enough for us to hear, he said, "You don't deserve to be here, you ungrateful B-word." The rest of the family arrived shortly after with trays of food and the dad pulled out a tinfoil-wrapped sandwich from the mum's purse and threw it at his daughter while the parents and 2 other kids ate the burgers and fries from the quick-serve restaurant. I just felt sick and wanted to cry. I saw a 2 to 3-year-old kid lagging behind his mum. She turned to him and said, "Get up here, motherfricker." Wasn't super disturbing, just funny and kind of vaguely racist. I was iced in Birmingham, Alabama earlier this year. While I was getting some continental breakfast, a man walked up to the coffee dispenser with his daughter of about 4 years of age. He says to her, "Honey, always like your coffee how you like your men, light and sweet." Nothing like vague Alabaman racial bias instilled at a young age. I overheard a mother tell her son that he'd have to hold it in until church was over. The kid was obviously desperate to go and the preacher had only just begun his sermon, but the mother was intent on making him stay for the entire service. I'm the parent in this one. My son has one of those kitchen playsets and various toy or utensil or food items, and refers to playing with the set as home living. An awesome name for it he picked up at daycare. One day, during the height of his infatuation with home living, we were at a store and he wasn't following me, and he kept grabbing stuff off the shelf or was in general engaging in a behavior that I needed to correct him on. So I told him, "Son, you need to listen to me or you're going to lose your home living privilege." It pretty quickly dawned on me that without context, that must have sounded pretty concerning to people around us. That's wonderfully unfortunate. I wonder if you got glared out of the store by everyone in hearing radius. Who knows, maybe a kid as rambunctious as that would enjoy an evening out in the tent in the backyard. Honestly, the young narrator would probably have been thrilled at that prospect. Funny what'll interest a kid under 10 years old. I was in Walmart about 10 years ago. I saw the exact moment a woman grabbed her small son, about 6, by the arm as he was crying, and she shook him a few times while yelling, "Break yourself, fool." I was at a condo community pool and overheard children berating this Asian couple. The kids were straight up telling them to go back to China and using slurs. The Asian couple were infuriated and told the kid that he's being racist. They then turned to the mother, and instead of apologizing, the mother told the kids to continue what they were saying and that the Asian couple had no right to tell their kids off. I had no idea what was going on until I put the pieces together an hour after the event. It still makes me mad to this day. My dad used to be a police officer. I was at the grocery store with him, and a woman in line near us had a kid who wouldn't stop crying. She pointed in our direction and told her kid my dad would take him to jail if he didn't shut up. After a day of whale watching, my girlfriend and I stopped off in Buena Park to have dinner. We were sitting in a booth by a window where she could watch the rain. A homeless man came up the sidewalk, pushing a shopping cart overloaded with stuff. She was wearing a halter top and stretch shorts, but it's California and not really cold out. As she's passing, one of her cart wheels hits something and her cart almost tips over. She frantically struggles to keep it upright and only loses the rolled-up blankets and some clothes. She was trying to pick up her stuff, but it wasn't easy with the rain coming down. I heard laughing and turned to see a family, mum, dad, and 2 kids, a boy and a girl, looking about 9 and 12 respectively, watching the woman and having a grand time laughing at her misfortune. Dad pointed at the woman and said something, making everyone roar with laughter, and then the daughter said something. I couldn't hear everything, but the parents were obviously teaching their children to look down and even ridicule the less fortunate. I guess this isn't that disturbing as much as it is what the frick. I once overheard a woman yelling at her toddler for crying. She said, "Shut up, why are you crying? You're acting like such a baby." I don't know which. Maybe it's because it's less than 2 years old and that's how it communicates with the world and lets you know something isn't right. I will not allow you to go to college. This person wasn't talking to the kid, but he was right next to her listening. I heard someone tell her friend that her kid would never move out and he'd be that loser living in his parents' basement all his life, right in front of him. To supplement that awfulness, anytime I did anything my mum didn't like I didn't clean something to her standard, she'd tell me what a loser I was and how worthless I was. I think that's why it bothers me that someone would say that to their kid. Just last night, at my significant other's very Christian parents' house, his mum said to their 27-year-old daughter who's dating for the second time in her life, "That sounds to me like you're pursuing him, and I don't like that." It was eye-opening. Pretty much everything in this thread is things my mother said to me as a child, or rather screamed at me, except the swearing. She'll never swear. Swearing is punishable by one heck of a beating in her book. Some of the things she thinks are more acceptable to say to a child than swear words include, "I've had enough of you, I'm putting you in a home," she'd pick up the phone and pretend to dial, or "Stop that noise or I'll beat you black and blue." In this case, I'd been crying because I was 4 and my brother had just thrown me, literally out of a bunk bed. I'd already told her this. Here's some others. "You're a B-word, no wonder all your boyfriends leave you. They find out what you're really like." I was a teenager when she said that one. "If it wasn't for me, you'd be starving on the streets because no one else would want you. If you don't stop complaining, I'm going to tell that policeman what you're like at home and he'll throw you straight in prison. Your friend's parents wouldn't put up with this behavior. They'd have got rid of you a long time ago." And so on and so forth, you get the idea. It wasn't like verbal, but once I saw a kid and his mum at a Toys R Us and the child touched one of the displays. His mother panicked at this and yanked his hand away and held it up in the air as she ran him over to the bathroom, presumably to wash his hands. It was so dramatic. "I brought you into this world and I can take you out of it," said my own mother on several occasions. As much as I can't stand kids, this teed me off. In a Walmart checkout line, go figure, some B-word looked at her 5-year-old and told him she'd strangle the breath out of your worthless butt if you don't shut the frick up. Was at the Science Center in St. Louis on Valentine's Day with my girlfriend at the time. We were walking across the covered bridge connecting the 2 sides and there was a mum with her child walking in front of us. He was maybe a foot in front of her when she screamed at the top of her lungs, "If you keep walking that far in front of me, someone is going to steal you," and just kept walking. The kid didn't even react, and the mum never closed the very small gap between her and her son. Most disturbing to me isn't the nasty or violent stuff, it's the subtle everyday things that bit by bit make the kid view themselves as a bad person. If you tell a child they're naughty or difficult or awkward or whatever every day for years, that child is going to grow up to be those things. It's why when I'm at work, I work in a preschool, I'm careful to chastise children's actions, not the children themselves, when they do something wrong. So there's a noodle place near where I used to live. It's basically a shack that the owners have to build from scratch every night when they open. Pretty third world, I know. Anyway, me and my roommates were having dinner when we overheard the owner of the noodle place saying something to her 2-year-old daughter sucking on a soda bottle. It was something along the lines of, "You better learn how to use your mouth like that now because you'll be doing it a lot when you're older." Me and my roommates stared at each other in disbelief. You have till the count of 3 to stop crying. 1 second passed. 3. The store went dead silent after that, and I never heard that voice again. Okay, this isn't something I heard, but it was something I saw, and it was pretty weird and quite disturbing. So I was working as a tourist informer, and then a woman came in with a young girl. She wasn't too young, maybe around 11 or 12, very quiet, quite normal looking, until I realized the woman was keeping the girl on a fricking leash. I'm not kidding. She had like those corsets with leashes that people put on their babies, but for a tween. Their mother just looked at the information and left the girl on the leash. I was like, what the cosmic eternal frick did I just see?
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.